The one thing I want to do, we're going to queue up the video here in just a second, but as the chairman of the board, I just do want to thank my fellow board members for their time and their resources and everything that they do to help Ryan and the staff and the EPPC scholars. And I just want to make sure that they have the acknowledgement. Many of them are here tonight, not all of them, but Robbie George is the vice chairman, Mary Ellen Bork, Eric Cohen, Howard Dahl, I know Howard's here, and Mary Ellen is here, Nick DeCosmo, Leonard Leo, Bill McClay, and Barb Gabby. So I just want to thank all of them for their long hours. All right, so next is the big world premiere video. Again, that was created for this evening's gala. And as those of you who do a little bit of social media or video editing, you know that even a 5-minute video takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I just want to congratulate Ryan and Mitch and Cindy and sort of all of the staff for putting this together. It's a lot of work. And so I hope you all enjoy it.
We live in an era that is anti-humane. The Ethics and Public Policy Center is a community of scholars that's dedicated to promoting a full and a true account of human nature, and then operationalizing that understanding of human nature and human dignity, both in culture and in policy. What we're doing at EPPC is trying to get every one of our man-made laws to reflect the truth about the human person.
It seems hard to believe that it's been only 10 years since Ernest Lefevre sent out his prospectus for the center, a center that was to focus on the political and international issues of our time in what should have been an ordinary but was in fact a revolutionary way.
The Ethics and Public Policy Center was unique at the time of its founding. There were many, many think tanks in the middle and late 1970s, but none that was explicitly bringing religiously informed moral reasoning to bear on public policy.
We're coming at our work firmly rooted in timeless truths, and I think that gives us an advantage. So we're not blowing with the wind. We know where we stand.
I think it can always be tempting to jump from one political bandwagon to the next one you see. I think that our success over the decades has been because we haven't. We have been steadfastly faithful to our mission.
What really stands out about EPPC is that it is rooted in a set of commitments. It's easy to say what EPPC stands for, and that's as true now as ever.
The big question of our day, I think, is what does it mean to be a human being?
The Ethics and Public Policy Center is a place that addresses that crisis of who we are in ways that policymakers can understand. That makes EPPC more essential today than it was at its founding.
Movements that are developing successfully are movements that take ideas and put them into action. EPPC has really made it a priority to operationalize their principles.
There's an integrity, and yet there's also a creativity and a strategic mindset that says, all right, these are the challenges we face, now what?
There's both a public side and a private side to our scholars' work. Our scholars will testify before Congress, they'll be quoted in major media, but there's also the private work. It's often more difficult, more time-consuming, which is working with legislators and policymakers to craft laws and policies and develop strategy.
We're unique that from the beginning, we've always had programs for religious communities, for religious leaders. We have scholars here who their primary audience are pastors and priests or rabbis. It's meant to be a very holistic response to the challenges of the 21st century.
It's a conservative think tank that isn't partisan. EPPC seeks to find the truth and express the truth in a generous, thoughtful, and clear manner.
We modeled then, and we modeled now, a way of thinking together about how we ought to live together that aims to serve the common good. That's a rare thing in Washington at any time, and I think we have embodied that for a half a century.
The most important thing that I have to do as president is to recruit and mentor the next generation of socially conservative, religiously orthodox, politically, civically minded scholars ready for whatever the next ideological challenge is going to be.
It is a place where a young person can find a way as a scholar to influence the direction of our culture and politics.
I joined EPPC back in 2021, coming out of the last Trump administration. I think EPPC took a chance on me. I was a young mom. I had just had my first baby in June of 2020, and I can really imagine no other place where I would be able to prioritize and live out the vocation of full-time motherhood and also engage in the policy work that I do. So without EPPC allowing that, there would be no tech exit book. There would be no model state laws on social media. It just wouldn't have happened.
It's been amazing to be at EPPC during this stage of my family life with young children. I have freedom and autonomy to develop a project and work on issues that are important to me. A lot of think tanks and other organizations promote pro-life and pro-family values, but EPPC truly lives it out.
The Ethics and Public Policy Center has been absolutely crucial to the building of the conservative mind and the construction of conservative arguments over the course of the last half century. I don't want to think of that half century without EPPC.
EPPC's original mission matters today because religiously informed moral argument in the public square always matters.
Ultimately, EPPC stands for the moral foundations of the American political project.
I am extremely confident that EPPC will be able to thrive well into the next few decades. They're always a little bit ahead of the curve. It's a really rich, diversified, thoughtful, creative, engaging, independent, and courageous group of people.
Well, it's a great video. I mean, I think we internally fell over when we saw the clips of Reagan in there. We found that internally, and it was so amazing to look at the speech from Ronald Reagan doing that. All right, so on to the main event, which is our keynote speaker, Ross Douthat. I had the privilege in 2018, in January of 2018, of somehow convincing Ross, who I had met before, to come give a lecture in my living room down in Dallas, Texas. And somehow he agreed to it. And so he gave a lecture, and I confirmed with him beforehand. He did not remember what it was about. But the title of it was Other People's Babies, The Unhappy Politics of Low Fertility. And so that was in 2018. And not surprisingly, it was brilliant and insightful and a little bit controversial. And the result was that all of my friends in Texas now have 7 babies. So, yeah, Alicia and I only had 1 kid then, and now we have 7. So we appreciate Ross's efforts there. But Ross joined, as you all know, Ross is an opinion writer at the New York Times, opinion columnist, that he's been there since 2009. He is also the host of what is now really the must-listen-to podcast called Interesting Times. And I think particularly if you've never heard of a podcast or never listened to a podcast, you should check out the one that he did with Ben Sass earlier this month, who is who's dying of cancer. It's a beautiful interview, and Ross did a great job. But what Ben Sass had to say in that interview was very, very powerful. But he has that podcast that he does, and he's also the author of a number of books, including "Believe Why Everyone Should Be Religious," which was published last year. To Change the Church, Pope Francis and the Future of Catholicism. Bad Religion, How We Became a Nation of Heretics. No offense to anybody in the room. Privilege, Harvard and the Education of the Ruling Class. A Decadent Society. And The Grand New Party, How Republicans Can Win the Working Class and Save the American Dream. But my own personal favorite of his books, and maybe it's because I think it's your most personal and sort of intimate book, is The Deep Places, a memoir of illness and discovery. And that's sort of, when someone asks, do you like Ross Douthat? And I say, yes, what should I read? That's the book I actually give them. So it's less political and more personal. But anyway, he also is a film critic for the National Review. So he lives in New Haven, Connecticut with his wife and 4 children. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ross Douthat.
All right. Good evening. I'm going to need to start with several important points of clarification. First of all, I was not informed before accepting this distinctive responsibility that Ronald Reagan had occupied this position on the stage at any point. And I have a very explicit rule that I send out in all my contracts for speaking engagements: never follow Ronald Reagan. But I will break it here tonight. The second point of clarification, Rob mentioned that I, very kindly stooped to enter his humble Texan home for what I think in his description he's suggesting it was, 3 guys sitting around a barbecue in the backyard listening to me counsel them to have more children. In fact, I would describe the Hayes home in Dallas as only slightly larger than this space in terms of its capacity. So I just want people to be clear about that. A final point of clarification is that while I do not have 7 kids, I do now have 5, which brings me up, I think, to slightly below average for the population of this room. Finally, I did want to say something personal about the interesting position that I occupy as, let's say, the Ethics and Public Policy Center's donor base's favorite New York Times columnist. I get that a lot. Sometimes people will say, what's it like? How do you do it being a pro-life newspaper columnist, a religious conservative, writing for secular liberals? And I'm glad to have all of you here tonight so that I can reveal that it was all a long con to get each and every one of you into this room. Parties of heavily armed Berkeley graduate students are currently sealing the exits, and you may not make it out of here. So anyway, no, it is a tremendous privilege to be with all of you tonight. It's a tremendous privilege to be here to celebrate 50 years of the Ethics and Public Policy Center. And I'm going to try to say something laudatory about the work that EPPC does and its achievements over the last 5 decades, and then something forward-looking, a minor exercise in punditry about the challenges that Ryan Anderson, all by himself, shirtless and armed, will have to fend off or face off against in the years to come. So let's start 50 years ago, because I think in the middle of the 1970s, it was very easy to imagine a future in which American politics was dominated, much like the politics of Western Europe has often been, by a kind of absolutist, socially liberal and secular consensus, one that marginalized religious arguments, that traded in a religious humanism for a kind of utilitarianism, and that really abandoned any kind of strong defense of an innate human dignity. And I think the great work of EPPC has been to stand athwart that particular future and also to propose and defend a different one, a different vision. To defend when necessary, let's say, but also to counterattack whenever possible. And like all movements, the cause of an ecumenical religious conservatism, a Judeo-Christian humanism, has known both victories and setbacks. No one would look around the United States of America in 2026 and say that religious conservatism stands triumphant and all its enemies have fallen. But I think that you can measure EPPC's impact and its power and its influence and the influence of the movement and causes that it has served across multiple dimensions in ways that I think would have been truly unexpected. Again, starting from where the culture was and has been at various points in its history. That includes long-sought and often impossible-seeming victories, like the end of Roe v. Wade above all. It means lines held and possibilities and dystopias resisted on issues like assisted suicide and euthanasia. It involves ground regained, as in recent debates on transgender issues, sports, gender transitions, whether Ryan Anderson's book should be available on the internet. And it means especially integrity and consistency on key issues amid ideological realignments and partisan pressure. I think to have come through the last 10 years in particular with both your original commitments and your principles fully intact is a very important achievement that we should all be grateful for. Not that anything weird has happened in the last 10 years, it's been totally fine and normal. Above all, though, I think you can measure EPPC's success in just the fact that religious conservatism remains a confident and dynamic force in American life, even as, yes, a minority perspective in some ways, because you can contrast that with where I think its great adversary, secular liberalism, has ended up, especially in the last 5 or 10 years. I feel like in that period, social and cultural liberalism has fallen into a profound internal crisis that's shadowed increasingly by various forms of pessimism and despair. And if no one looking around the United States today would say that social conservatism stands triumphant, I don't think anyone looking around the US or Western Europe would say that a secular, hyper-individualist, utilitarian ethos actually has the winds of history at its back, or that it's poised to govern the rest of the 21st century, that it's ready to master technological change, or suppress radicalism and nihilism, or even, to return to the subject of my lecture in Dallas, that it's capable of inspiring human beings to the most basic task of reproduction, of having kids. No. Great battles are won not just by defeating your opponents, but sometimes by simply outlasting them. And in 2026, I would confidently bet on the worldview described in that video, the worldview embodied and celebrated here tonight, outlasting the increasingly exhausted rival with which it has been wrestling for, lo, these many decades. However, hold the applause, because the exhaustion of secular liberalism does not mean that all the world stands ready to embrace Judeo-Christian humanism or adhere firmly to Ryan Anderson thought. If the last 50 years were defined by, most of the time, a pretty stark conflict between a religious humanist vision and a secular liberal alternative, I think that the next few decades are likely to be, well, let's borrow a term from foreign affairs and describe them as multipolar. And institutions like EPPC need to be ready for that world and ready for a new set of challenges and challengers. And I'll sketch out sort of brief descriptions of what I see as sort of the main 3 categories that exist as potent or potentially potent alternatives to religious humanism right now. The first is probably the most familiar one, an illiberal left, a progressivism defined not by its commitment to an aggressive individualist liberalism, but by a kind of rejection of anything that seems too liberal and centrist and procedural and technocratic. This is wokeness, right? And all its pomps and works. In some areas and places and situations, it's in a kind of hibernation right now, but I think that it is likely to be poised for a comeback and is certainly resilient in many American institutions. It's not relativistic and utilitarian like secular liberalism often is, but it is moralistic, ideological, sometimes fanatical, filled with a kind of quasi-religious energy, even as it lacks often truly religious hope. So that's one force, one category. The second one is, let's call it, a post-Christian right. The return of Friedrich Nietzsche, maybe in the form of, various internet personalities whose importance could hopefully be exaggerated, but I think manifest in a wider scale than that. There's a lot of talk and critique and anxiety, especially among my friends who are liberal or on the left, about an age of Christian nationalism. I think that the danger for Christians, for people of sincere religious faith, is a future where there's a Christian nationalism that is primarily about nationalism and only incidentally about Christianity, where religion is purely subordinate to secular political causes. or simply a nationalism without Christianity entirely, that doesn't even bother to wear religion as a veneer, that's focused entirely on ethnic and tribal loyalties, and that brings, quite predictably, anti-Semitism and racism in its train. It's always been the case that there are forces like that at work on the political right. This is not entirely a novelty, but I think in the larger crisis of the secular liberal order, those kind of forces obviously have new life, and they're part of discourse and argument and debate on the political right in a way that I've never seen in my own lifetime. And engagement with, argument with, and confrontation with those ideas and arguments and forces, I think, is fundamentally essential. So I've given you a perspective from the right and a perspective from the left. And then let's call this last one a transhumanist center, meaning, in particular, a big part of the world of Silicon Valley, which has its influence on both the right and the left, can ally with Republicans and with Democrats, can appear progressive and can appear right-wing, all in the service of a vision that can present itself as non-ideological, but really embeds all kinds of Promethean, if we're being optimistic, or sometimes even Luciferian, if we're being extremely pessimistic, assumptions about what human beings ought to be and what we might become, offering technologies that I don't think can simply be rejected or moralized away, but that desperately need to be moralized seriously about and mastered before they master us. And I think it is especially essential for the people involved in the kind of work that EPPC does to take all of these rivals, all of these alternatives very seriously, not just defaulting to a right-left binary, as important as that may be, in which wokeness is always seen as the primary enemy, but reckoning with forces that are in the political center, are in the political establishment, are inside the right-wing coalition, reckoning with the racist podcaster or the eugenicist transhumanist as much as the pro-choice Democratic Party leader or the, left-wing academic. But finally, I want to stress, on an optimistic note, the importance of seeing the opportunity here in this unusual multipolar landscape, recognizing that there is not some sort of aggressive, ascendant, monolithic alternative to the vision that religious conservatives want to put forward. Rather, there is a fractured group of rivals. And in this landscape, there's absolutely no reason to think that religious humanism can't contend equally for influence. There's no need to regard social and cultural conservatism as a remnant, or even just as a creative minority, a language that I've sometimes used myself. I won't use the term moral majority because that's a little historically fraught. But I do think that aspiration is the correct one for the people who work at EPPC, the people who support EPPC, the people in this room tonight, to see a moment of crisis and fracture and derangement as also a moment ripe for argument, persuasion, conversion, revival, to help large numbers of Americans who are sort of adrift between alternative visions of the good life and the future, who are prone to succumb to either despair or, again, sort of an over-reliance on various utopianisms, to offer to them the message that EPPC has always offered, right? A message that emphasizes the truth about the human person and the essential idea, what I think is going to be the essential 21st century idea, that there is no cause greater than ensuring in this strange digital, technological, and political future the full flourishing, the ultimate survival, and the final triumph of, God bless us all, the human race. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
All right, I need to clarify some of Ross's comments. So Ross came to my house in 2018. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, that this place is big. But in 2018, 2 years is when he talked. 2 years later, we built an addition on our house. So we're definitely bigger than this. Like, that's ridiculous, Ross. You're welcome to come back down anytime. So in the fall of the year 2000, I had recently graduated from college. I was working for a bulge bracket investment bank, and I made the decision to leave investment banking to go find myself and do a couple of years of campus ministry. So I went back to my alma mater. And in that role of campus ministry, I led a freshman Bible study. I was looking at the young men that I had in that Bible study, and I found that there's a Lutheran priest, we have an Episcopalian priest, there's a Silicon Valley leader who's one of the main guys at Y Combinator right now. We have a researcher in computational neurobiology, a Caribbean hotelier who used to work at the NIH doing medical research, little change of career there, some doctors, and yes, our very own president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center. So yes, I was Ryan Anderson's freshman Bible study leader. That is where we met. And what I can tell you is that the 2026 version of Ryan Anderson is a definitely new and improved version of the 2000 version of Ryan. So thank you, Anna, for your heroic work on that front. Now, while the 2000 version of Ryan was a little rough around the edges, like most of us are at 18 or 19 years old, it was clear, though, that he was a man of tremendous gifts. He was incredibly smart. He had a willingness to really engage people in conversation. He had an ability to be very charitable amidst conflict, and he had a real genuine desire to grow in his faith. Which is why when years later in 2020, I got a call from him, and he said that Ed Whalen had called him and asked him to consider whether or not he would consider taking the role of EPPC, and wanted to know what I thought he should do about it. Now, I will tell you that I was a little biased because I had been trying to convince him to stay in the academic world, and I was trying to get him to come down to my friends at the University of Dallas. But alas, when he said what the opportunity was, I told him, you have to do it. Because in my mind, I thought Ryan was built for this. He has the qualities that I saw in him when he was 18 and 19, that they had been honed and focused over time, both through his academic work at Notre Dame, and then the intellectual work and policy work he did at the Heritage Foundation, and that he was a man built for this role in this moment. And so I told him he had to do it. And then he replied to me, well, if I do this, you have to come with me. And so that's how I became the chairman of EPPC. And it is a wonderful thing to be able to take someone that you consider such a dear friend and at least assist him from time to time in helping build something and improve something upon an incredible legacy that George and Ed and others through the years have built. But be able to look at not just the past 50 years, but the future 50 years. And to be able to be creative and operationalize it. And it's been a great joy and privilege to do that with Ryan. So let me introduce Ryan. Ryan, you can probably start heading up here. So Ryan just completed his 5th year as the president of EPPC. He's co-authored or authored 5 books. His research, including several that are very difficult to get on the internet from time to time. He's been cited by multiple Supreme Court justices in different Supreme Court cases. In May of 2025, he was appointed by President Trump to the Religious Liberty Commission. He's appeared on basically every major news network, including his famous Piers Morgan interview, which brings back some good memories. He's been published in basically every major newspaper. They have this long list. I'm not going to read all of these things, but there's a long list of basically every newspaper. And he's been published by Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, First Things, Claremont Review of Books, and the National Review. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Princeton. Now, what's interesting is I got this, and it did not describe what his major is. I don't know how many of you know. Who here, if you know Ryan Anderson's actual undergraduate degree, raise your hand. All right. What is it? Music. Ryan plays a mean marimba. So a Bachelor of Arts degree in music from Princeton University, graduating Phi Beta Kappa and magna cum laude, and he received his doctoral degree in political philosophy from the University of Notre Dame. Ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly blessed to be able to call Ryan a friend and our next speaker, Ryan Anderson.
Wow. Of all the introductions I've ever received, that was certainly the most recent. So thank you, Rob. And thank you for everyone here for celebrating our 50th anniversary with us. When I look out at this room, my heart's filled with gratitude. And that's not a normal emotion because people think I'm heartless. But tonight it's filled with gratitude. I see so many friends, allies, collaborators, benefactors, co-laborers in the vineyard. I'm grateful for your support in so many ways over the past 50 years, and I look forward to working with you for at least another 50. The actuarial tables for my life expectancy may or may not bear that out. I'm the beneficiary of a great legacy. I came to EPPC, as Rob mentioned, 5 years ago. I inherited a wonderful organization that I'm now privileged to steward. I'm the 6th president to serve at EPPC, and we're fortunate to have 3 of our previous presidents, George Weigel, Elliott Abrams, and Ed Whalen, all here tonight with us. When the board interviewed me for the job, they explained that some institutions serve their purpose and come to realize that it's time to sunset. They fulfilled their mission and are no longer needed. Other institutions, they realize that times have changed and they need to change their mission to keep up with the times. The board said neither of those was the case for EPPC. EPPC was needed now more than ever to bear witness to the truth about the human person, because we live in an age that is deeply confused about what it means to be human, where public policy directly undermines the truth about human nature, where our culture generates profound sadness and unfulfillment. The task at hand for me and EPPC was simply to be faithful to our founding mission, to recruit and empower the next generation of politically conservative, theologically orthodox, civically minded scholars working to shape our laws and renew our culture. From the beginning, we have done this in an intentionally ecumenical way. We're a community of Jewish, Protestant, and Catholic scholars developing and deploying the Jewish and Christian traditions to contemporary questions of law, culture, and public policy. Our scholars think deeply about the questions that matter most, working to build a culture that protects and advances an authentic understanding of human dignity and human identity, and proposing public policy that will enable human flourishing for all Americans. Our vision is to sustain a society where families and faith communities prosper and where the American way of life flourishes. For 50 years, EPPC scholars have consistently sought to defend the inherent dignity of the human person, marriage and the family, individual freedom and responsibility, justice and the common good, the rule of law, and limited government. In the video before Ross spoke, Yuval Levin said that it's easy to say what EPPC stands for. So let me say a few words about that. EPPC stands for the proposition that all men are created equal, that we're endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, and that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We believe that America is built on social and moral values that are true and good,
We wholeheartedly embrace our nation's founding principles, and we view them as the best way to advance human flourishing in our own time. We are committed to upholding these truths, articulating and applying them coherently to public policy and public discourse. America is a mix of ancient and modern, natural law and natural rights, the common law, Jewish and Christian political theology, and Enlightenment liberalism. An amalgam balancing liberty and its limits, freedom and virtue. EPPC works to recover and apply this balance in thought and practice, because doing so will brighten the future of America. Like our founding fathers, we know that the success of the American experiment depends upon the moral and religious character of the people. From the beginning, EPPC has had programs directed both at political leaders and at religious leaders, a think tank for the church just as much as for the state. There's no shortage of punditry offering hot takes and social media memes, but EPPC takes a different approach. We identify the long-term civilizational issues that matter for human dignity, identity, and flourishing, and then we engage the generational questions that matter most with intellectual rigor and rhetorical charity. True to our founding purpose, we recruit thinkers, the best thinkers in America, to engage both religious and secular disciplines, philosophy, law, social science, theology, medicine, in vindicating the truths most essential to human dignity. We don't attempt to work in every area of public policy, only in those that most directly implicate the human person, and that allows us to make a distinctive contribution to major institutions of American civil society. Our scholars are proactive, anticipating future challenges and preparing now to meet them when they come. In a polarized political and cultural environment where so many have forgotten what it means to be human, EPPC promotes a true and full account of human nature and human flourishing across the span of human life, from conception to natural death. At the beginning, we work to protect the unborn from the violence of abortion and to empower mothers and fathers to raise their children well, understanding that a marriage culture is the surest long-term solution to the scourges of abortion and family fragmentation. Parents can't do it alone, however. We work to make public schools, where 85% of America's children attend, free from toxic ideologies and more accountable to parents and their elected representatives. We work to make religious schools vibrantly orthodox, so they offer a choice, not an echo to the government-run alternatives. We work to reform culture so children can have an authentic childhood, where parents have authority over big tech's encroachments, and where children are free from gender ideology to feel at home in their own bodies. No one's dignity can be protected, no one can flourish without effective and limited government. We work to defend our constitutional order and the quality of our judiciary. We engage the administrative state, which frequently can be the source of lawless ideology and serious violations of conscience. And we work to chart a course for winning political coalition to uphold the ideals we espouse through our other work. At the end of life, we work for an America where no one is intentionally killed, having their deaths sanitized with euphemisms like death with dignity or medical assistance in dying. The most important truth of human nature is that we are made in the image and likeness of God. That is why we were so unique 50 years ago and continue today to have programs devoted to strengthening religious communities. We don't know what challenges the next 50 years will bring, but EPPC is committed to rising to the occasion to defend the truth about the human person, to point to a more humane way of life. Our guiding lights 50 years ago remain the same today. the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, the natural law tradition, Western civilization in general, and the American constitutional order in particular. Whatever these next challenges may be, we'll be as faithful to our touchstones for the next 50 years as we've been for the past 50 years. As Ross's rather sobering remarks remind us, there are many bleak possibilities, but history isn't a blind force. It's shaped by people like you and me. It's determined by the choices that we make. And I'm thankful that so many of you in this room are with us for this civilizational fight. Thank you to our coalitional partners. We aren't so naive or arrogant to think that we alone can produce the religious humanism that Ross described. It's only in coalition with our allies, like those in this room tonight, that we can effectively propose this more humane path. Thank you to our allies, the various public policy organizations and public interest law firms who have helped sponsor tonight's gala. Thank you to the political and religious leaders who are with us tonight. We exist to serve you, to help you more effectively fulfill your duties to promote the political and ecclesial common good. You honor us tonight with your presence, and we're grateful you could be here with us. And of course, as Rob mentioned, we're fortunate to have so many of our board members and benefactors here tonight. We don't take government money, and surprising as it may sound, there aren't special interest groups throwing money at us to defend human nature. All that we do is made possible through selfless, sacrificial giving of time, talent, and treasure. And for that, I'm profoundly grateful. And lastly, thank you to my EPPC colleagues. You do important work, and you do it well. Long before I became president of EPPC, I was grateful for the work that you do. And even if I wasn't president today, I'd be thankful for the future you are helping to build for my children. But as president, I'll simply say thank you for the great work that you do, as it makes my job so easy. For all of the EPPC staff and scholars, as I imagine is true for all of you, our friends, our collaborators, our benefactors here tonight, the work we do is part of our vocation. It's not a job. It's not simply a paycheck. It's part of a larger mission to redeem the time, to transform culture, to shape public policy, to ensure that all of our man-made laws are derived from the natural law and the eternal law. It's a high calling, and we thank God for this calling, to work on issues that matter at an institution that matters with great colleagues and partners. It's a great blessing, and I'm thankful we're putting our shoulder to the plow together. Thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for being here tonight. Good night, and God bless.
Thank you, Ryan. Your leadership's really important, and it's great to see the work that you and the rest of the team has built over the last 5 years. It's been encouraging and important for our country, our culture, our families, and so well done. All right. I don't have a funny story about Archbishop Broglio. So, but Archbishop, Your Excellency, you can probably start making your way up here. Though I did get the opportunity to have dinner with him one night. He probably doesn't remember this, but last summer at the Napa Institute, I sat across from him or next to him and talked to him. And all I can say, I'm grateful for him because he was a wonderful man and grateful for the role that he has. He was installed as the 4th Archbishop of the Military Services in the United States in January of 2008. He recently just stepped down. He was the president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, which he served from 2022 to 2025. And before that, he has served in numerous diplomatic posts around the world, including 11 years as the chief of cabinet to Cardinal Sodano, who was the Secretary of State for St. John Paul II. He's a native of Cleveland, Ohio, was ordained to the priesthood in 1977, and holds a doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. And we are very grateful that he carved some time out, because he's a very busy man, but he made time for us tonight. And so, His Excellency Archbishop Timothy Broglio.
Thank you very much for those kind words. I've been asked to give the benediction, so let us pray. Omnipotent and loving Father, continue to look with care on your daughters and sons gathered here to celebrate the golden anniversary of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and inspire wisdom. Guide their steps in civic and cultural renewal and sound education. Help this center to continue breathing on the embers of the Judeo-Christian principles that are the framework of our society, so that they blaze in a fire that does not consume, but enlightens paths forward. Guide our debates so that they might be civil and principled and respectful of the innate human dignity of all. Keep us open to what is substantial and formative for a healthy, wholesome future. Accept our thanks for this evening's repast, the messages heard, and the joy and remembrance shared. Teach us, in the words of the newest doctor of the Church, to seek the grace of a cheerful heart, an even temper, sweetness, gentleness, and brightness of mind, as walking in His light and by His grace. Let us pray Him to give us the spirit of ever-abundance, ever-springing love, which overpowers and sweeps away the vexations of life by its own richness and strength, and which, above all things, unites us to Him, who is the fountain and center of all mercy, loving kindness, and joy. We make our prayers in your name, which is ever holy. Amen.
Thank you, Your Excellency. All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm now the only thing standing between you all and dessert. So thank you for the 50 years of support. And as a token of our appreciation, we have gift bags back there. Please take one. I got a note from the staff begging me to remind you to take one, because if you don't take them, then our staff has to take them back to the office. Don't make them do that. And if you're here late, take two. But please take a gift bag as a token of our appreciation. I also want to say a special thank you to all the staff and the volunteers that made this happen, especially Cindy Searcy, who I think where's Cindy over here, and Claire Scott. I don't know where Claire is. Claire's probably, she's in the back over there. Claire Scott and Ella Ramsey. Those three ladies really made this night happen, so thank you to the three of you all. I also want to thank our three platinum sponsors, the three people that sort of in an exceptional way helped us tonight. And the first is the Bradley Foundation. So, thank you to the Bradley Foundation, who has helped a lot of people, in this room as well. It's been a great partnership for many years, and we're very grateful for your all support and help in all that we do. So thank you for that. We also want to be very grateful for Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF crew. Where's the ADF table over here? All right, over there, the ADF crew. They've been an amazing coalition partner through the years, and we're aligned in so many ways and helpful to one another. And for those of you that don't know, they just had a very big 9-0 win yesterday, and the first choice, I think, was the case. So congratulations. I think it's now their 18th Supreme Court victory. So I don't know if anyone else in this room has 18 Supreme Court victories. No one? All right, ADF, you win. So congratulations, and thank you for all of your work and partnership with us. And then lastly, the St. Jerome Institute. All right, where's their table? I couldn't pick it up. Oh, wait, it's right here. The St. Jerome Institute is a private Catholic liberal arts classical high school with a campus in Northeast DC that opened up, you said 7 years ago, Michael, is that right? And are opening a new campus in Falls Church in the fall. So all you Northern Virginians, come talk to this table over here if you want your kids to turn out okay. So thank you for the St. Jerome Institute for your support. All right, so to close tonight, I want to just close with a very brief story of what, at least what I hope and I think our board and the staff hopes for the future of EPPC. Alicia and I, this fall, we're dropping off our second child. So we have 7. I've got 2 in college. One's a junior at Notre Dame, and one is a freshman at Princeton. And one of the great privileges of dropping off our child at Princeton was that we went with a group of other parents and sat them down with Robbie George. So Robbie George had this group of maybe 12 or 15 students, freshmen, and he sat down, we had this nice lunch, and he sits these kids down, and he says something that really struck me in the moment. And he said, at no point in time, you young students, should you feel afraid to speak the truth, to speak your conscience, to speak what you believe and hold fast to. At no point in time should you be afraid here at this university to say that. And then he said, but always in charity, and ideally through friendship. And that was obviously a very proud parent moment, and I guess a proud thesis advisor moment, because it was a long time ago. But that theme has stayed with me. And it's something that I had shared previously with the staff and scholars, but I think that represents very much who we are at EPPC and many of the organizations that you all are a part of as well. That as we go into a very partisan, very social media driven era, and I think akin to both Ryan's comments and some of the comments Ross made, is that we fundamentally need to be people who are willing to say hard things, truthful things about reality, but with the spirit of charity. Because we are not, while we are playing a short game in the sense that we've got election cycles that we're dealing with and trying to get bills passed, fundamentally, we're playing a long game. Actually, the longest game, an eternal game, right? One that deals with souls and grace and virtue and salvation. And so we have to have a very long time frame in everything that we do. And so one thing that I hope for us and the movement at large is that we are a group of people and an organization that speaks truth in charity through friendship. So with that, thank you all for coming. God bless, and go get you some dessert. Thank you.